This is the ICO Alert Podcast, episode 29. I'm your host, Robert Finch, founder of ICO Alert. ICO Alert maintains the only comprehensive list of every single initial coin offering. That includes all of the active ICOs that are happening now, as well as all of the upcoming ICOs. You can check out the full list on our website at icoalert.com. We are back with our second ICO Alert Roundtable. We have a couple new faces on the podcast today, a couple people that were here in the last roundtable that aren't in this one. But it was a really interesting discussion, talked about kind of the current state of the market. We answered some questions from you all on Twitter, so thank you so much for sending those topics over. As a quick matter of disclosure, we are talking about some coins in this podcast that the members of the podcast do own. These coins are Civic, EOS, Walton Chain, and 0x, so we're being totally transparent there. Additionally, please do not take any of this podcast or the content we talk about as legal, investment, financial, or tax advice. We're not giving advice here. We're simply talking about the current state of the market and our opinions on that market. So, without further ado, let's get to it. All right, we are back with another roundtable episode. We got a lot of good feedback from last time. People seem to enjoy us kind of talking about everything from shitcoins to new ICOs to the state of the market. This week we did it a little bit differently and asked you guys on Twitter at ICO Alert to send us some topics that you wanted us to cover. I think before we get started, let's do a quick little introduction again. We have a few new faces here on the roundtable. For example, Mike's not here this time. I, once again, am Rob. I'm the CEO at ICO Alert.
Hi, my name is Dimitry Chesnikov, and I'm ICO Relationship Client Manager.
Hey, I'm Ryan Dennis, Client Relationship Manager.
Joseph Argiro, Data Analyst.
Zach G, another data analyst.
Zach Quezada, VP of Business Development. I didn't know it was Argiro.
Argiro, not Argyro.
Argiro, I've gotten
Wow, I'm learning a lot. So that's who's on the podcast today. Got a couple new faces. Q, I understand some people are tweeting at us about topics.
Okay, let's go into the first one. So we asked on Twitter, let's go to the profile real quick. On Twitter, we asked for some crypto or ICO topics that you'd like to hear discussed, and we got a lot of good ones. So I guess I'll just start from the bottom, and probably the most detailed one. Tell us about IC. Okay, so Rabbi Azizi at Rabbi Azizi 2 says, tell us about ICOs that offer master nodes, please, and be more straightforward about junk ICOs.
Ooh. Well, I can start. There is a master node program for Walton Chain. Mm-hmm. Walton Chain gives you a master node for having 5,000 Walton Chain coins. And you actually do have a say in the participation and distribution of how the tokens are used moving forward. A lot of ICOs say they're going to do that, but Walton Chain is past the ICO period, and they're actually doing that. So they also have a stage called a Guardian Master Node, which sounds like something from StarCraft, but it actually obviously has a little bit more autonomy in it. So
awesome. What's the difference between a Guardian and a normal Master Node?
I just think the amount of benefits you get with regard to how many tokens you get back, they just make it. They make it so you almost never want to sell it.
Oh, so you have to hold more than 5,000?
Right, and the Walton Chain chat on Telegram is very, very detailed, and actually there are people who stalk the charts. So if somebody sells more than 5,000 Walton Chain at any point, everybody freaks out on the Telegram.
Which one of you sold?
Yeah.
It was a master node. That's great. I think that's, as far as active ICOs, I don't know of any active ones that have master nodes. That seems like something that gets announced later after the ICO closes.
True.
But we'll keep an eye out if anything pops up. What else are people asking?
Let's see, Rocco at Obstropolis. The growing trend in relation to private placement with airdrops and how it affects the ecosystem.
Private placement?
The growing trend in relation to private placement with airdrops.
I mean, we could talk, I'm not sure I understand the topic, but we could talk about airdrops in general. There's a big one coming up.
Everapedia. So EOS has announced a new way of kind of doing ICO funding via VC funding, which their first airdrop token is going to be for a company called Everapedia, which was founded by the one of the co-founders of Wikipedia, actually.
Larry Sanger.
Larry Sanger, and they're going to be launching their ICO on the EOS platform. And rather than charging the token recipients for the tokens like in a typical ICO, they're actually going to airdrop their tokens to EOS token holders, and they're being funded through a development grant from the funds raised in the EOS ICO, if that makes sense. I think Rob could do a better job of explaining this.
Basically, Block One, the company who makes the EOS software, has committed $1 billion of capital into funding dApps. So a lot of these dApps, instead of running a traditional ICO where you'd see it on ICO Alert and say, oh, wow, I can put in X amount of money and get XIQ tokens. Instead, the only way to get those tokens is to hold EOS tokens, because they're just doing a pure airdrop instead of an ICO. And they're getting their funds directly from Block One instead. So this is the first of many. I think Block One contributed along with Galaxy Digital, Mike Novograt's new VC fund. I think it was $35 million. So there's still a ton of room in there for the other $1 billion to be spent on other ICOs. So it's the first of many airdrops. But really the most interesting component is that you can't buy it otherwise.
So when did airdrops actually become a thing in the blockchain space, in the cryptocurrency space, and why, for the newer users, why would an ICO have an airdrop?
That's a good question. I think the first time I noticed them was probably, it might have been last year, maybe end of 2016, but really last year. Because, I mean, if you think about the current structure of a lot of these tokens, they're airdropping to the list of token holders, which you can see on the blockchain. Like you can go to Etherscan and see everybody that owns EOS, and then they're just dropping to that list. So before that, it was never really possible to do a full airdrop.
Oh, wow, okay.
I know what they used to do, or what I don't know if they still probably do, but a lot of tokens who raise a traditional ICO, like a couple months after their tokens are released, they'll occasionally do an airdrop to all Ethereum token holders based on the weight of the Ethereum that they have in their private wallets. Like OmiseGo has done this. It's a way of them to promote their own ICO, or not, they're not ICOs anymore, but their own tokens, because someone who has Ethereum in their wallet back a couple months ago, not everyone knew what OMG was. So one day you log into your wallet, you check your wallet, and you have this OMG token. You're like, "What's OMG?" Mm-hmm. So you look up OMG, and you find out, "Hey, I got some OmiseGo tokens. Cool." So that was the airdrops I've seen in the past were from coins that were already distributed and paid, bought in different ways, and they'd airdrop for promotion.
Yeah.
Buyers beware, though, because when I started getting into the actual trading and looking at different coins to actually buy, all over the place, this is like the beginning of 2017, I was seeing airdrop. And a lot of people got scammed.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of scams.
So, I think that when you look at the term airdrop, be wary, okay? Please be careful. Make sure that you're verifying if you're actually going to get these tokens from somebody else. Make sure that you're talking to somebody else who maybe has already gotten their tokens from this airdrop. Also, there's a program that we actually partnered with, Clearify, to kind of avoid scammy airdrops and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, the number one thing is do your own research. If you get a private message on Telegram or a private message on Slack or a private message on Reddit, anywhere, telling you about an airdrop, it's probably a scam.
And if you have to enter in your private key or your password or any kind of security measure you wouldn't otherwise share, then it's probably also a scam, because they don't need any personal info from you to do an airdrop. They just need that list, which they can already find on the blockchain.
Always double check the URL of this airdrop promotion, because it's probably a very similar URL to the official one, but it's not the official one. If you ever see anything advertising an airdrop, always check the official channels of whatever company or project it's for, and you'll probably see that it's not actually a real airdrop.
Ultimately, I think airdrops are probably going to be an even bigger trend in 2018, even if it's only because of EOS, just because we're going to have a significant amount of heavily funded dApps in the tens of million range doing free airdrops to EOS holders. So I think it's going to be one of the big themes, especially since it's the most widely distributed ICO ever. They can immediately distribute their token pretty widely.
Speaking of EOS,
yeah?
EOS Finex was announced this week.
Yes. You want to explain what that is?
As far as I know, Bitfinex is working towards decentralizing their exchange, and they chose EOS as the platform that had the scalability to do it. I don't know where that's going to put Finex, because that was something that they're also working on. I think they're still probably going to do that because they're using 0x protocol on that, and that's to swap Ethereum tokens, which would allow you to have pairs with any Ethereum tokens. So you'd be able to trade like OmiseGo for ZRX, or any two Ethereum tokens could be swapped, so it's not always like a Bitcoin or an Ethereum pair. So that'll be really cool. But the EOS Finex, not a lot of information's been announced on it yet.
I think it'll be interesting to see because theoretically, EOS supports the Ethereum virtual machine, so you could theoretically run all of those same trading pairs for all the ERC20s on EOS Finex. Like it'll be interesting if that, like you're saying, if it gets rid of Finex or if they exist simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So for most of our audience, I think they're going to be using centralized exchanges like Binance, like Bittrex.
Right.
What is the benefit of a decentralized exchange?
So it really comes down to maintaining control of your assets. So when you want to trade on, say, a Binance or a Coinbase or something like that, you're actually depositing your coins into the exchange, and you're trusting that when you want to do withdrawal that they're going to give them back to you, or that the exchange won't go down like Binance recently, and everybody's freaking out about are they solvent, are they not? Obviously, it turns out they're a good company, they have all the money, it was just a tech issue. But
So all the trades are then atomic swaps, like they happen. Is that how it occurs
on a centralized exchange, it's just in their own system.
Well, yeah, but I mean, with the decentralized exchanges, it's atomic swaps. It's like we're trading.
And the buy and sell happens in the same transaction.
Okay.
So if you're selling 100 ZRX and I'm giving you 1 Ether for that, we make that swap and it happens in the same transaction, so you can't get screwed over. But the biggest differentiator is that you're maintaining control of your assets, usually on like a hardware wallet like a Ledger or in your own wallet, while you're trading on the exchange. So you never have counterparty risk of the exchange like Mt. Gox or all these other Cryptsy, Bitfinex at one point in time.
There was a big one last week or two. A company called BitGrail was hacked. $150 million worth of Nano/Railblock tokens were stolen, and pretty much everyone who had their tokens stored on that exchange, well, they don't have any tokens anymore, and it was the exchange's fault for having a vulnerability, and because they didn't own their private keys, they lost their tokens. So that happens time and time again, and that could be avoided with a decentralized exchange where you control your private keys.
It's crazy how much money these centralized exchanges are making. CoinCheck happened a week prior to that. To that, and they said they're going to pay. I don't know the exact details, but from what I heard, they're going to pay.
It's $500 million.
Yeah, and they're going to pay they said they're paying their investors back.
That's what's so crazy. It's like, oh, we lost $500 million. No worries. We'll just take it out of our profit and give it back to you.
I mean,
It'll be fine.
Bitfinex was hacked a while ago, and they made up a token as kind of like an IOU.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone who's involved in that hack has a small piece of equity in Bitfinex's profits, in perpetuity.
And also, when last week we had Binance, right? They were down for a little bit.
Everyone was terrified.
My question is when they're doing repairs or something like that, or they're going down and you're not sure, what do you go to? What do you ask about what's going on?
Yeah, my thing was they were really transparent with what was going on. They were super transparent. And before it actually went down, they said it's going down. Now, I know you have situations where like a Twitter can be hacked, but they would have needed to hack Binance's account and the owner or the CEO.
CZ was also tweeting. Every 2 hours they were updating. That's the thing. That's the best case scenario. Like no one likes downtime, and also they allowed. So one of the biggest issues was what if you had a trade open, and then as soon as Binance would relaunch, the prices could have changed dramatically over that day or two. So they gave an hour buffer time from the time Binance came back online to allow you to open or close your trades, which was great too.
Nice.
Yeah, because that could have really screwed you over. You have a buy order or a sell order for cheap Bitcoin and the price went up by 20%.
Right.
You don't want to sell that cheap Bitcoin.
I'm really curious to see how long it takes the centralized exchanges to disrupt centralized exchanges. Because what's the point? At a certain point, if it's just as easy or maybe even easier to use a decentralized exchange than a centralized one, and you always have control over your funds, what's even the point of using a centralized
I think right now the issue is up until now, none of the decentralized exchanges could handle the scalability of the order books.
Right.
So what were the two big ones? There's ZRX. There was another Ethereum one.
Well, Binance is centralized.
Shoot.
Yeah.
And that's why
Ether Delta is the other one.
That's what John King said, that they wanted to make it centralized so that transaction speed is bar none, in terms of speed. And on that same question on Twitter about the masternodes, they wanted us to be more straightforward about junk ICOs. And so like BitConnect is an example of a junk ICO and exchange, right? So are there any... I thought we have Dimitry here, who's very good. His background in finance is stellar, and he is really good at kind of looking at ICOs and saying what's trash, what's not. I really want to hear Dimitri's opinion on like when he's looking at an ICO. Just frankly, like, how do you know something's junk or shitcoin or not?
Well, yeah, there are many categories that I look at essentially when I first evaluate the ICO. First thing is when you arrive on their page and you can't find the team there, that's a pretty much, pretty big red flag there. You want to have the face of the company. You want to meet the guys, see what what's their background in relation to the project. In addition to that, the main thing that you want to look for is the basic thing is the actual website secure. Remember, Joe, the other day you showed me, was it one of the ICOs that didn't have the HTTPS website address?
Yeah, surprisingly, there's a large number of ICOs that haven't even secured their own webpage, so that any information that's passed over the website can be viewed by anyone who's looking.
Yep. And then going into like Telegram channels, social media, taking a look at the followers, how many members they have, what are they talking about in the Telegram, because I've come across projects where the admin would not answer any questions in the Telegram, and the questions that were raised were very valid points and essentially exposing that this is like a scammy ICO, and they avoided answering those questions. So all those red flags, pretty much filters that I use when I look at evaluating the ICO. What do you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's also pretty easy to do a reverse Google image search. Like if you're in Chrome and you right click, for example, the image of the CEO on the website, you can hit reverse image search by Google or whatever the text is, and it'll show you where that image exists. That's a very easy way to find out, are these photos even real, or are they pulling these photos from some random person, that's not even associated with the project?
Another thing I like to look at is on the white papers. All of the legit ICOs have a ton of legal speak in their terms and conditions in their white papers, but I've seen some really thin white papers that are missing all of the legal and regulational talk that educates the potential buyer on what kind of the terms and conditions of the ICO sale. If it's missing that means they didn't do their legal homework. That means they probably didn't buy a legal team. Something's fishy with that if they don't have a lot of legalese in the ICO white papers themselves.
I like pretty colors.
Pretty colors?
That's what I'm
So it's a black and white website. No go.
No go.
Red flag.
No, I'm joking. One thing that I don't put too much stock into, which I did at first when I was a new ICO investor, is the YouTube videos. I used to be like, oh, that's a really well done YouTube video. They must have a really good team. But I feel like some of these, to put it, junk ICOs, I feel like could hire someone easily to do that. And I think they do that to kind of...
There's companies who pretty much target ICOs now. They're
Yeah.
professional video makers. They're really good animators. They're good at what they do, but that doesn't mean it's good ICO.
Exactly. So be wary of that, man. Definitely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I see that another person asked about upcoming current ICO watch lists based on stuff they may see on our website or not. If you go to ICOalert.com, shameless plug, but we do really thorough reports. And if you're looking up an ICO that nobody's heard about and you're not sure, just go through one of our reports and kind of compare it to the research you're doing and seeing if you can kind of compare and contrast in any way, shape, or form all the different dots. Is there distribution information? Is there information on when you're going to get your tokens or anything like that? And if there's a lot of missing spaces, then are you really confident that you're going to be investing in something, or you're just sending somebody your crypto?
Mm-hmm. So true.
Who was that asked the question?
Well, somebody asked about the junk ICOs, and I noticed that somebody else, it looks like Crypto Axelrod.
That's
Crypto Axelrod.
Shout out to you. He said, state of the market, keep seeing people claim we are in the mainstream adoption mode. I disagree. We aren't in the adoption mode until I can buy Starbucks with crypto.
I don't think we're in the mainstream adoption mode. I think we're about to enter the institution adoption mode. But the main thing that I hear when I talk to people is custody. Because a lot of the current, if you don't know how a hedge fund structure works, a lot of their legal agreements are set up where a hedge fund doesn't want to take on all the liability, and in some cases legally can't take on the liability of storing all those assets. They need custody. As it is now with securities, stocks, bond, they have somebody who's custodying those assets. And the biggest piece that's missing in crypto right now from an institutional standpoint for those funds to invest is some kind of custody. because they may not have the education, or they don't want to take on the liability, or they can't take on the liability to store it. And nobody's really solved the custody piece yet that I've talked to. I talked to somebody recently, like in the last couple weeks, about their custody solution, and there were a lot of holes in terms of like, the question I asked was, is it possible for your team to just steal all this money? And he was like, not impossible, but would be very difficult. Like all it requires is 3 people to collude to steal all the money, then that's not a safe enough custody solution. So somebody has to come up with a way, whether it's through like a created multi-sig wallet or time locks or something else, to really store this stuff securely, where it's not just like, the team, we have $10 billion now in our vault, we can take it and leave. Because people have done a lot more to steal a lot less in the past.
Yeah, I've seen some ICOs we've done reports on recently that are doing zero chain and zero storage things, where, for example, Adamant is not keeping any storage or data with regard to their messaging program. So they're making an instant messenger that's very anonymous, and they said not even they have access to any of the conversations as a team internally. That's something that makes me feel good, because they don't have a reason to kind of watch in on things. And that question came up in the report because WhatsApp, which was the first end-to-end quote-unquote encrypted messenger, if you look at it, the team in WhatsApp, they can actually insert themselves into any chat they want to.
What?
And then they can actually dismantle the chat or take information from that. So yeah, your chat is private, but that doesn't mean nobody else can jump in.
Yeah, and if anybody can jump in, then it's not private.
Right.
That's crazy.
Another mainstream adoption, big thing that just came up is Coinbase Commerce. Just was released, I think, a week ago, and it's actually something we're working on internally for some tools. But it's pretty much going to let anyone with a shopping cart built on WordPress, WooCommerce, Magento, or ZenCart, and a few others. Those are the major shopping cart tools that your standard e-commerce sites use. It's going to allow any of those sites to start accepting cryptocurrency through a Coinbase account. And you don't have to actually have a Coinbase account to buy things from those websites. You would check out, if you've ever shopped online, sometimes you'll see the option of entering your credit card, but then there's another button that lets you use like a PayPal login. It'll be very similar to that, where you're just going to click the Coinbase button, and then it's going to give you the public key that you send your money to. You send your money to them, and then you're going to get your products just like you paid with a credit card or PayPal.
So RIP all payment ICOs.
Basically.
Yeah,
That's like there are so many blockchains that are one feature. Like, we're doing payment. Like, well, what makes you different than Bitcoin or any of those people? We have lower fees. Okay, great. But a lot of these ICOs that are launching their own blockchain, I think really are just dApps, and they don't have a good platform to launch them on yet. Where, like, for example, if Steemit was running a year from now, Steemit may build on EOS versus or another platform versus building on their own blockchain. I think a lot of this is the same way. Like, you'll have an ICO that, hey, we're running a blockchain for a decentralized marketplace for X, and that really doesn't need its own blockchain. It can eventually just be a dApp on a blockchain. But I think the payments is a good example of like a single feature that this entire ICO and this whole blockchain is designed to do one feature, when really that's not sustainable long term. It doesn't make sense.
The other thing about Coinbase Commerce, because there's other sites that have accepted cryptocurrency. Overstock.com's accepted it for a while now, and I think Shapeshift has some tools that
BitPay has a pretty good tool to let you accept it.
But I think they have fees for both, like pretty bad fees for the end user, for the person purchasing the products, and for the company that's selling the products. But from our own research, Coinbase Commerce, from the merchant themselves, they charge 0% for the first $1 million of sales, and then only 1% after that. So that's lower than credit card fees, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow, that's game changing.
The problems that it'll solve for our business are definitely worth 1%. And huge shout out to Justin O'Brien over at Coinbase. We were originally needed a tool like this several months ago last year, and we're working with them on kind of building it out. It turned into eventually Coinbase Commerce, but a lot of what we talked about in terms of fees and stuff like that eventually was incorporated. I'm sure we weren't the only people in the process. There were many others, but thanks to Justin for putting out a really good product with Coinbase Commerce.
Well, so that brings up another conversation, right? When you guys talking about interest rates and the kind of the tax on it, is how many of you guys have paid your crypto taxes?
Whoa.
I've paid all my crypto taxes.
I'm out of here.
The IRS is listening. This is going to be
I bring it up because one of our writers wrote an article about crypto taxation without representation because the SEC a couple weeks ago was going pretty hard. They were having hearings, they're having meetings, and the past couple weeks, a lot of new rules have come out. And I went through it with my tax guy, and he was running through it with me, and he was basically like, some people can try to run and hide, but anybody who's day trading a ton of things, they're going to have a lot of surprises when they do or don't do their taxes. And he made an interesting point, which I thought was funny, was I think if you're investing in crypto, you kind of feel like you're running away from the government. You're like, I'm getting away, like you can't chase me. But what he said is like, that's fair, like to have that opinion, but the truth is the government knows that this is the biggest thing happening in money.
Yeah.
So this is actually the first place they're looking with regard to who they're going to be hunting down.
Well, and it's also transparent in terms of like the records. I mean, they can go on the blockchain. If they get, for example, the list of however many tens of thousands of people at Coinbase who've transacted over $10,000, they can get that list and see all the outgoing transactions and trace it on a blockchain to some extent.
And for people that don't know, that's already happened, right? The IRS already.
They took it to Coinbase took it to court, or I think a couple anonymous Coinbase members took it to all the way up to Congress, and they said, oh no, it's too far-reaching, but you can still get all the info of people who have transacted more than 10 grand on Coinbase within 2017. So if you've done that, you should pay your taxes. You should pay your taxes anyway, but now especially you should pay your taxes.
We talked about this in our little work group text message of identity on the blockchain. Like it's only a matter of time until identity is going to be a requirement for a lot of things. Not for everything. There's always going to be space for things like Monero and things like that. But to invest in a lot of ICOs, for instance, a lot of them are already doing KYC, but you're going to have an identity token on the blockchain, like Civic, or there's a lot of other companies doing it too. But once identity is on the blockchain, it's game over. And if you think you could run from the government now, if they don't have the tools already to trace everything, they will.
Here's the thing about identity. Identity on the blockchain is like a very fine line, because you can go too far and then we're in some weird like one world order Big Brother scenario where everything's tracked and your ID doesn't meet the right reputation score, so you're locked out. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, because the benefit of crypto is you can decentralize and almost get outside of that form of ID. But if we're going back to it, there's some trade-offs, I feel like. Obviously it's decentralized, so it's a lot better than a centralized digital ID system, but I don't know. It can be sketchy.
And that's so fun because the word is probably ironic that if this technology that was created for Bitcoin and all this decentralization actually makes it so it's more centralized.
It would be very ironic.
Yeah, it would be incredibly ironic.
Fortunately, theoretically, you can't. I mean, right now, I guess people could collude, like the top Ethereum miners or Bitcoin miners, they could collude to block your transaction. But as long as wherever the main form of digital ID, as long as that's on a public, fully decentralized blockchain, I think we'll be fine. Because then you can't. Only individuals then can choose to not accept payments from other people, or there can't be one overarching power who says you can't send that payment to this person.
I think identity would be interesting too, because you don't have to necessarily give up your like government identity. So think of it like you're using a coupon on a shopping site, and they don't want you to keep reusing the same coupon over and over again and creating new accounts. So they could use biometric data, for instance, to just verify that you've never created an account before, but they don't know your name or your address or anything. They just know that you've never created an account, because they could track like either through facial recognition or through a fingerprint to say, okay, this guy's never used this coupon before, or this guy's trying to use it more than once. Like there's a lot of identity ways to handle identity without actually saying like they're going to have like all your information on your passport or your driver's license or something like that.
So like a zero knowledge proof approach.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's what Civic is, isn't it?
That's why I know about it. I do own some Civic. I got into it a while ago. I don't have a whole lot anymore. But it's really interesting what they're doing, and I know there's a ton of others in the space too since then. But that's kind of the idea behind it, and that was one of the solutions that was discussed, was like you can only create one account, because and the company like the Airbnb or whoever doesn't want you creating multiple accounts. They don't necessarily know all your private information, but they know that your private information was verified on the blockchain.
Right.
So like, what was that word you just used?
Zero knowledge proofs.
Like
zero
that.
knowledge proof is when you can prove something without giving them any knowledge or information of what you're proving. So they can say, the blockchain can tell the merchant, yes, this is Ryan Dennis who's trying to buy this thing, without actually giving up any of his info, like his birth date or a social security number, or any of the information that proves that to that blockchain app. It's
Zero knowledge proofs are actually a hot topic, because a lot of different applications are trying to implement this technology. Rob, can you speak on more how this this zero knowledge proof thing is being used in other applications?
I think it can apply to a lot of different industries and apps. I think one of the most interesting examples is like if you go to a nightclub and all they need to verify from you is that you're at least 21 years of age or older, at least in the United States. It's different everywhere. But you give them your entire ID, which has your first name, middle name, last name, your address, the date of birth, when your driver's license expires, the state you lived in, all that stuff, your photo, when really all that needs to happen is that somebody needs to verify, hey, this person's over 21, they can enter the bar. And you could do that in a zero knowledge proof situation where somebody builds a blockchain app and when you come in, you scan your finger or something, which is linked to your blockchain ID that says, yes, this guy's 21 and over, and you don't have to share all that personal information with the bar to actually let you in.
Well, it's like if you show up to the bar, it's just terrible, right? But you show up to the bar and you have a receipt from like maybe you bought like I don't know, something from a corner store that requires you to be 21.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then you can bring that receipt and say, hey, this proves I'm 21. But then they have to have a system that says, well, that grocery store, that corner store has to be legit too.
Right.
Right. So like it's dependent on other systems. So like with those zero proof things, like Joe, you're saying they're a hot topic. Are these companies like kind of coming together? Do you see more partnerships with zero knowledge proof systems, or is it more like single entities?
Just seems to be a concept that's being applied to different blockchain projects, like kind of, it's just a concept that's being applied, in the space in general.
Yeah.
And we had another question. Somebody from John Smith at The Long One. Relationship of tokens versus zombie equity when raising subsequent rounds of capital. Does anybody know anything about zombie equity? I got a couple finance guys in here.
Has anybody heard of that term before?
Relationship.
I've heard of zombie tokens, which hasn't really happened yet, but it would be like, let's say any of the ICOs launching this year. What happens if the project pretty much is a failure and the team just stops working on it? Then you have these tokens that have some sort of value, but they're zombie tokens because there's no development going on it. But that's a completely different thing.
What he's referring to is that when you're part of an ICO and it continues to do more rounds without finishing the ICO, and essentially you don't get the distribution, or you don't get the tokens, or it doesn't hit the exchange. So you basically threw in your ether and it's locked up for a good amount of time.
That bothers me like no other. We get a lot of inbound listings where ICOs ask us to list them, and one of the things we ask is, what are the dates of your ICO? Nothing bothers me more whenever they have a start date but no end date.
Yeah.
Because that's a red flag to me of you guys aren't running your ICO properly, because you should have a clear end date. If I'm going to invest in an ICO on the day one when I'm allowed to invest my Ethereum, I want to know roughly when this thing's going to be ending so I know when I'm going to get my tokens. Not having an end date is a huge red flag to me.
I was adding a bunch of old ICOs to Veripedia, I guess this week or past weekend, and it was interesting because a lot of them I would just put the start date and end date, what it was originally, and then what it actually was, and some were like, oh, this was ending. This was supposed to be over in August 2018, or August 2017, but it actually ran through January 2018. So I think to answer this guy's question, I think multiple rounds in an ICO are fine as long as it's disclosed up front, so that the people in round one know, oh, there's going to be 4 rounds instead of them just waiting to get out of this thing as quickly as possible.
And that's very different from a company saying, okay, our ICO is going to end maybe the 30th of this month, and then the 28th of the month comes, and they say, actually, we're going to extend it 3 more months because we've got great support from our community. That's very different, because if they're saying 3 more months, they're still giving another definitive end date, but you got to be close and watching these things, and it's always subjective. You got to look at the entire project and team and how much you trust it.
Yeah, if they bump it back more than a week or two, that better be a legit project.
If
or
I
else I would
invested in
be very sketched out.
If I invest in a pre-ICO and then they extend the ICO for an extra 3 months, I would be so pissed.
So what are you guys' thoughts? We're coming out of a couple weeks of a very bear market. So I'd kind of give some ICOs a pass there if they had horrible contributions. And it's just because nobody's investing as much during a bear market. I kind of give them a pass there.
Yeah.
And congratulations, by the way, if you hodled throughout the entire bear market. This is the second biggest percent-wise, quote-unquote, crash, dip, whatever you want to call it, other than Mt. Gox in 2013.
And RIP to anyone that sold under 7K.
Yeah, if you sold and you've learned your lesson. We all did it at one point. Now you know for next time to hold.
So another interesting thing, since we're talking about the bear market, we did our data analytics recap today, and we looked at our site traffic, our unique users per day, our email signups per day, and I actually overlapped those charts with the Bitcoin charts.
That's crazy.
And it was insane at how it correlated together. And there's other correlations you could do with Google search history. If you look at Google Trends and search how many times Bitcoin was searched, and overlay that on top of the Bitcoin price chart, it's the exact.
Pretty scary.
It is.
It's scary how close they are. Like you say, oh wow, look at all this Bitcoin interest that's coming up. Oh wow, look at the price go. It's pretty wild.
Do you guys buy into the Chinese New Year thing? Because today is actually the Chinese New Year.
That must be why Bitcoin's sideways.
They're buying presents, guys.
Well, happy New Year.
Bull market.
Yeah,
Happy New Year.
It was
Bull
just funny
market from here on
there was a meme in like early January.
Yeah.
It was like, don't worry guys, it's just a short dip and all the Chinese are buying presents.
So literally every dip we were like, yep,
They're buying presents. Don't worry, it'll be fine.
I'm just looking forward to alt season to come back.
Yeah. I mean, this one was way overdue. Like, we had tokens that are just total shit coins that pumped insane amounts. Like, it was good that this happened.
Don't you name them.
Oh, I want them.
Not my bag. Not my bags.
Oh, man.
How about Giancarlo, the CFTC commissioner?
Oh, this guy's great.
Yeah.
Oh,
how about
man.
him dropping Hodler?
Superstar.
Yeah.
Hodler is now on government record from the Senate committee hearings.
It's a public record.
Giancarlo, he defined Hodler.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, both the chairman of the SEC, I forget his name, and the head of the CFTC, Giancarlo.
Mark Clayton.
What's his name?
Mark Clayton.
Mark Layton?
Clayton.
Mark Clayton.
Yeah.
Okay. They both had basically a briefing with the United States Senate, I believe it was, and basically talking to them about, the actions they've taken on ICOs in the past, where they, shut down the fraudulent ones and what they want to do in the future. But the quote, does anybody have the quote from Giancarlo? He said something to the effect of, we owe it to this new generation to respect their technology and basically do a thoughtful regulatory approach. So it's very bullish. I mean, it echoes a lot of the statements the SEC put out in the past, where they validated utility token models and said they're not all securities, but many will be. But it was cool to see the U.S., especially as all these other countries like China are actually trying to ban this stuff. It was good to see the U.S. come out and actually have a very proactive, thoughtful approach.
That was kind of the start of Bitcoin's rebound also.
Yeah, it was.
Like, I didn't think that the Senate hearing was the reason for the dip, and I still don't think it was, but it was the uncertainty. Uncertainty is scarier than the regulation itself, the uncertainty of not knowing if it's coming. And I think when that Senate hearing happened, I think that was the initial start of the rebound. Do you guys agree?
I don't necessarily agree with that.
I agree.
I mean, I think it's more so. It more so could have been like really, really bad if like the news came out and it would have crashed to way beyond the levels that it was at.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, but I don't think I can apply that logic to saying that because it was a good response that's the reason for the bounce.
I don't think it was the only reason.
Yeah.
But I think that's around the same time as it started to come back. Was like, oh, this positive announcement. Finally, there's some good news.
Okay.
Although a lot of the bad news has been just total, it's just been inaccurate.
Yeah.
Like the South Korea stuff, people, they're banning crypto completely. And then the actual Minister of Finance, or was in South Korea, actually comes out and says, no, we're not banning this, but people still think that they're
buying
banning
the dip.
Yeah, exactly.
The actual Giancarlo quote was, "We owe it to this new generation to respect their enthusiasm about virtual currencies with a thoughtful and balanced response, not a dismissive one."
Yeah.
Wow.
And I saw also at the end of that, Q kind of said it's not a great ending to that hearing. At the end, when the ultimate griller in the Senate is usually like Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, and she was talking about how the SEC has never barred investors who've been cheated from bringing class action lawsuits, with reference to the fact that you can't bring a class action lawsuit to some random ICO where a lot of people lost their money. I think at the end of the day, people who really know crypto, this didn't really scare you because this is just new ground. But if you're an investor, even if you're an accredited investor, you know that you may lose all your money anyway. You know this is risky stuff. Like at the end of the day, you're not just throwing $10 into Coinbase. Some people are really trying to make a living off of this stuff, and it's a risk. I mean, this whole thing we're talking about, crypto in general, is a risk. So the fact that the Senate is even talking about that is bullish to me.
100%. It's also cool. Like, it's cool to see it get this legitimate, that they're having conversations about it in the Senate. Like, not that it only takes the government to say something for it to be legit, because it's legitimized a lot over the last couple of years, but it's cool to see.
I think it's really inside that interview. He talked about having heard about Bitcoin or having learned about cryptocurrency from his family members, from his nieces and nephews, some type of, which I think is so important.
Grandpa
to understand.
Giancarlo, please.
I was surprised his niece didn't get doxxed. I'd be following her in a second.
They're not going to dox him if they think it's something negative. That's probably positive.
Yeah,
It was a very positive thing. I'd be giving her props.
But exactly, man. Like, think about how like she changed. Nah, I'm getting way too existential right now, but like, it's the butterfly effect. What if he didn't have those younger people in his family that were forward thinking, and he just felt like every other person over 50 that's in the government?
I mean, a friend of mine who's in traditional finance bought Snap because his kids told him they were using Snapchat all the time, and then Snapchat went up, and it's like, oh, great. So people listen to their family, especially their kids. And what if she was bearish on Bitcoin?
Exactly.
It was evil and told him, like, would it have been a totally different hearing?
Exactly.
That's interesting.
I think that the question we really have to pose is like, is crypto the most interesting thing in the world? And I think it's a hell yes.
Yeah, right now.
I haven't talked to anybody about anything other than crypto since the beginning of like December. And I mean, even when I'm in Uber and I work at ICO Alert, obviously I want to talk about it. But the conversation comes out of nowhere everywhere I go. I mean, people are all talking about it.
Yeah.
Wow. Because it's
pretty wild.
Because it's positive.
I just got
every other piece of news that you think about that anybody wants to talk about it
is
negative.
Yeah.
It's either you're talking either about Trump.
That's why I don't watch
or you're
the
talking
news
about shootings. You're talking about
all of that stuff. I saw that on Twitter. It was like about the shooting, which is a horrible tragedy. Of course, I'm not trying to diminish that in any way, but I feel like we spend too much time. Maybe this is off topic, but as a society, focusing on the negative shit. Where if you just focus on what's relevant to you, like obviously horrible tragedies happen, and we should all do whatever we can to help those. But I think it can really affect your mental health if all you're doing 24/7 is consuming negative information. Whereas if you step back and maybe don't watch the news every day and focus on the things that make you happy versus make you scared to go outside, I think you just be a little better off.
It's funny you bring that up because Facebook actually was talking about mental health and how they want to change their algorithm again because they're putting up too much news and negative stuff. Right after they said, this is 2 weeks after they said they were going to ban all crypto advertising, and Facebook's desperate for advertising money.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're doing that, they're trying to switch their algorithm, is they know that their platform is making people sad.
Yeah.
So and now that there's no crypto on it, people are becoming even more sad.
Exactly. I mean, the whole reason I quit Facebook is because it's just everybody posting like the most vitriolic shit.
Yeah.
Like they go to the grocery store and somebody bumps their cart, and then they do a whole rant on Facebook and transfer all that negative energy to you when you read it. Like, this bitch at the grocery store bumped my cart and I spilled the milk, and fuck them for ruining my, like, I don't want to hear about that. Like, I joined Facebook to see photos of my family and like vacation, which is what it used to be, and now it's just like, let me tell you how bad my day was. Like, okay, it's fantastic.
I just came up with a new way to make a bunch of money. So, so the CFTC just put out a statement on pump and dumps for a new whistleblower program.
No, wait, really?
Which the CFTC is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission here in the United States. So they put out a bounty for whistleblowing pump and dumps. I'll read it. Virtual currency and digital token pump and dump schemes continue because they're mostly anonymous. If you have information that leads to a successful enforcement action that leads to monetary sanctions of $1 million or more, you could be eligible for a monetary award between 10 and 30% of their fine that they get from whistleblowing this pump and dump.
I don't know about
Whistleblower.gov.
Wow.
Telegram beware.
Everybody, that's good. Everybody, when you grow up, your mom says, "Hey, don't be a snitch." It's like this. If what they're doing is illegal, whatever. But
here's my question, because this kind of goes back to our first roundtable where we were talking about the philosophy of the shitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And like how shitcoins are subjective, right? I mean, if you invest into an ICO, I mean, it's like a startup. You don't know if they're going to do great or they suck.
Mm-hmm.
If the company's just not successful, and it's a pump and a dump, in a certain way where the company just didn't fulfill their needs based on whatever kind of existential, circumstances they came in. How can somebody's going to blow a whistle on them potentially.
Right.
When I think of pump and dump, I'm thinking of these like paid Telegram groups where they tell you what to buy on your cell targets and stuff. And they have like 20,000 followers in these groups, and I have no idea how anyone falls for it
It's just
anymore.
interesting to me that the approach they took to crack down on like the market manipulation is like, let's get snitches.
Imagine how it's so impossible though, because like you could be in these Telegram groups and it's still anonymous.
Yeah.
Like it's
It would
attached to a
have to be
phone
like,
number.
oh, I know that my friend is running this group and he rat him out like a horrible
BitConnect.
Yeah, I think that's an important part, Ryan, because there's a difference between a bad idea and a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what people don't get right now, is that they see a bad idea and they're like, oh, that must be a scam.
Yeah.
Well, there's bad ideas
Yeah.
in business all the time, but people go through it. No one's going to call them a scam.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important part.
You
to
look
be
at
made.
just any small business statistics in general. Most businesses fail.
Yeah.
To think that every ICO is going to succeed is insane. That's like thinking every bar or restaurant that opens going to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Truth is, 80 to 90% of them are going to fail. And it's going to be the same with crypto. CoinMarketCap has an awesome feature. It's like a historical snapshot. You could look at the rankings on CoinMarketCap from any time frame within I think since 2013. Just looking at it from 1 year ago, you wouldn't even recognize a lot of the coins in the top 25.
Yeah. What were some of the ones that you talked about? Do you remember that?
I'd have to pull it up, but some of them are still there. Obviously the Steam, it's the Litecoins, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums are still there, the Ripples. But there are just a bunch of coins that are just shit coins now that were in the top 20 last year.
Interesting. Just one quick shout out, BitSean, underscore.
BitSean.
So BitSean underscore said, awesome, really enjoyed the last one. And he's talking about in relation to our roundtable last time. So
Awesome.
shout out to
Appreciate
you.
that.
Thanks, BitSean. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
There's a lot of comments.
Yeah,
I'm
a lot
surprised.
of comments. So
What else did people say?
I think we've been through all of them. I think the last one we got was from Crypto's Batman, and he wants us to talk about Neon Exchange, Tomo Coin, Go Network, or Seal. Does anybody know?
Seal, I
Seal,
couldn't get
yeah.
into the wait list. The Google form yesterday was clogged up. I don't really know much about it.
Seal claims to be another
Gen 4
Gen
blockchain.
4 blockchain and be highly scalable, but I don't know, maybe they are.
They had an insane amount of people wanting to be on their wait list. I didn't hear about it until it was kind of late. You probably know more about it than I do. Their website looked like crap. That was kind of a red flag to me. For how much people knew about it and wanted to invest in it and get on the wait list, I feel like they could have did a better job on their website. I know that's a little...
I mean, I'm just incredibly biased. So when I see especially a new ICO that's we're going to solve all the scalability issues, I just always go back to EOS. I'm biased.
Yeah.
I feel like there's too much that they have for an incumbent to now take over, especially once the blockchain launches in June. These projects don't have $1 billion committed in capital. They don't have Novogratz and Eric Schmidt as VC partners. They don't have. There's so much that the new ones don't have. It'll make it a lot harder to be one of those.
I think that scalability, if anybody's investing into ICOs, that's another thing that kind of we're talking about into how you can tell if it's a good project or not. If you've ever started a business or you've watched Shark Tank, scalability is actually one of the most difficult things in business in general. So if you start a lemonade stand, and your sons are starting a lemonade stand, maybe it's easy to sell 10 cups of lemonade a day, but if you ask them to sell 100 or 1,000, how would they do that?
Yeah.
That's an incredibly difficult question. So with crypto, when you have an unlimited amount of scalability with every single person on the internet being a potential user, scalability is a very, very serious question. And if somebody's saying, oh yeah, we already developed a great plan for scalability, probably not is the answer until you've heard from somebody who really knows what they're talking about and proved it, like the EOS team and Walton Chain or some other companies that are that have proven that they have groundbreaking new generation technology that is capable of doing it based on the surveys of experts.
Just to be devil's advocate here, they haven't necessarily proven everything that they've talked about yet.
Right. Everything that they've said that will be implemented on the testnet, for example, is there. And they've proven 100,000 transactions per second on a live blockchain with something like Steemit, which is the same tech. But you're right. It's not all proven.
Yeah, and I think EOS and Walton Chain are two of the better coins. So I'm not trying to talk on them at all.
But devil's advocate is good.
We need it.
Going back to the mainstream acceptance, there will be no mainstream acceptance until the technology is above and beyond what we currently have available with centralized databases.
I think we're also misunderstanding what mainstream acceptance might look like. I think a lot of people think of it as everybody's going to own Bitcoin. But I think a lot of it is it's really just going to be somebody using a dApp on an EOS or a Walton Chain or whatever it may be, and they don't even realize that they're using that dApp.
Steemit's the best example of that. You could be a regular reader on Steemit or their video channel DTube, and not even know you're on a blockchain. If you don't have an account on there and you're not trying to earn Steem dollars or Steem credits, then you don't even know you're on a blockchain. You feel like you're on a blog.
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy. Every comment and like and downvote, all that stuff, when you log in, it's sending a the transaction to the blockchain. Everything's on a blockchain, which is pretty crazy, and it still functions like Reddit, and it doesn't go down.
And those are kind of like, it's kind of changing the way we look at reward programs, right? Because you just get rewarded for using it. So like going back to Adamant, that ICO, they want to give everybody 0.49%. I mean 4.9 of a coin, so that they can play around and do messages on their instant messenger. Same thing with Viewly. Viewly, if you upload a video, you actually get 50 view tokens or 100 or something like that. If you watch your first 3 videos, you get 10 tokens for each of those. So if you're just going around there and you're just perusing different channels and just binge watching, you're actually getting paid tokens.
You're pretty familiar with these video decentralized systems, and they're very necessary, because if you think about YouTube, there's a lot of people who have a big following on YouTube, and that's their main source of income. YouTube only offers you those special like payment packages if you have a certain amount of followers and subscribers and things like that. And there's been numerous cases where, for sometimes silly reasons, a YouTuber with a big following will get that program yanked out from under them. That's their whole source of income.
And it's crazy how it really affects more of the smaller YouTubers, like, because it'll be a wide policy change. For example, with the PewDiePie thing of him making potentially distasteful jokes that were like Nazi jokes or whatever, but the context that the Wall Street Journal presented it made it seem a hell of a lot worse than it was. And because of that and the advertiser backlash of, we don't want to advertise here, it didn't really hurt PewDiePie. He's even said he added a mid-roll to his video, and now he's making the same amount of money as he was before. But it hurt all the small channels who are the ones that are out there grinding, that are working another job, and maybe this is a way to pay another part of their rent.
I mean, I think YouTube used him as a scapegoat, and they use anybody as a scapegoat, because if you really look at video sharing program, YouTube takes advantage of you as much as they can.
Yeah.
I mean, they're owned by Google guys. They're not some friendly little company that's trying to make their way. They're the media. They're the internet. And they want to make sure that no other video sharing program is monetizing video more than them. I mean, if you go on Google and you search, how much does it cost to, host my own videos or to do my other things? The good advice is all the way at the bottom of the search result, okay? So it's not easy to do that. And you think about companies like Vimeo, right? Where's Vimeo? I mean, Vimeo is just it's like, I don't think they're making too much profit, but when you look at these decentralized video programs, they're going to disrupt the makeup industry. I mean, think about visual artists. Everybody knows, somebody who puts on makeup and watches makeup videos, and they just look at them all day. That market is like an $87 billion market. And they're all trying to find an alternative to YouTube, because they're all getting screwed.
Yeah.
They actually took off the channel. Only reason I know this is because of my fiance.
It's okay if you watch makeup too.
I love makeup. But I was reading about one particular guy who's a makeup star. His name is Jeremy Starr, actually. And they were basically, the reference is that if you are making tons of money on these makeup channels, it was because there was a channel on YouTube called Beauty. And apparently a little while ago, they took off the beauty channel because YouTube didn't know how to monetize it. Because these people were making money because they're saying, come buy my cell phone case so you can take better selfies, or come buy my makeup. And YouTube wasn't making any money off of that, so they
just shut it down.
They just removed it. So now they're back in the abyss of just random videos.
There's a few companies they wield a lot of power. I mean, Facebook just banned ICO ads a week or two ago.
I mean, even just think about Facebook or Google's algorithm, what they can choose to show and not show. It's really
you're trusting that they're not bad actors, and we hope that they're not. But Google could single-handedly swing an election by just having biased results if you're searching for advice on who to vote for. Like whoever's at the top is going to get the most clicks. I mean,
that's why. I mean, a lot of it comes down to freedom of speech too. Just with the YouTube stuff, like somebody will post a controversial video even about YouTube, and YouTube will delete it. And it's like, well,
absolutely.
Do we even have free speech? I mean, obviously it's a private platform, so they can choose what they want. But it would be nice when all this is decentralized, that then the creators can really create what they want without somebody telling them no, that can't be on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's experienced having something weird happen on their Facebook. A privacy setting changed, or somebody, just something is missing, or like, and I think I left Facebook as a platform as well. I mean, as soon as they talked about, I did actually a week before they said they were going to be banning the crypto ads, because when, I joined ICO Alert, we were going to put the Crypto Minute up there. And we started trying to run advertisements on Facebook. And I have over 2,000 followers in the time on Facebook. And the video was up for 2 days, and I put up about $50 in advertising just to see how it would work. And I had 31 views on those videos. And I know if I put any other content on my page, that's a ridiculously low number, because I had another comment, a status that like maybe an hour before I put up the video, and that had 151 likes. So what I'm asking Facebook is like, do you think that we don't know that you're like, affecting crypto? Like Google, we know that you're doing that too. We know that you're watching us, but we're watching you too, guys.
Right.
Like,
That's what's so weird about a lot of this. Like, when it's possible for them to be disruptive with something, it might just happen very quickly. Like all these YouTubers who hate YouTube now for making all these decisions, if suddenly a DTube gets popular or something gets popular, everybody just switches and then YouTube dies.
I said before, though, it's not going to happen until that new technology is better than the current one.
You need a good generalized blockchain platform.
Yeah.
I know before we had spoke about maybe talking about some ICOs. So I know that we're wrapping up kind of here, but I know Joe maybe wanted to talk about one of the ICOs that he invested in this week.
Sure. So it kind of goes off Ryan's point about viewing networks and being decentralized. So one of the ICOs that caught my attention the last 2 weeks was this ICO called Current. And going back to what we talk about when we look for like a junk ICO or a good ICO, a lot of what I look for was something that is already in the marketplace and isn't relying on the ICO funding to put out their MVP, but it's really just to get to more of as a marketing campaign to get the word out to gain mass adoption. So this Current token, it operates as an app that aggregates all of your music content, whether it be from YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and allows you to pull music from all of these different platforms into one app and actually rewards users in the Current token for consuming media. So the reason why I really like this ICO is that it's not looking to displace Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, or all of these platforms. It's looking to work with them to actually and allow the user to pay for their subscriptions to these platforms in this token by rewarding people in the same way that Steam rewards people for posting and liking and commenting on blog posts.
And real quickly, full disclosure, Current paid ICO Alert for some promotion, but did not pay Joe to say this. It's Joe's own opinion on the ICO, but keep going.
And another thing about it is that one thing we didn't touch on is that when evaluating an ICO, one of the things I look at, which could be a little shallow, is social media following. So I noticed that Telegram went from they had about 80,000 Telegram followers, and they went to about 100,000 in a day or two, and that kind of just stuck out at me as something that was interesting. Also, Mark Cuban is one of their advisors, so
there it is. That's the real reason.
So, but the reasons I gave plus those two superficial reasons is why I decided to participate.
I actually love that you said that one part where they're not trying to like displace anybody, because that's what you see in a lot of these ICOs where they're making these bold claims like we're replacing Facebook, we're the new Facebook. There's nothing I hate more than going onto an ICO and saying the world's first. Like that stuff just drives me insane. So I like that.
It's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the practical aspect of we're going to be used with these platforms. That's where I think the good ICO, like I'm not going to say it's good or bad if they do that, but I like that transparency.
Yeah. It's extremely rare that you'll be the first of anything. It's extremely rare. I mean, and especially like Bitcoin is the first current cryptocurrency supposedly, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be the best always. I mean, we're all looking at what's the heir apparent.
And before that, there was even, what was it, Hash Cash or something?
Big Gold.
Big Gold, yeah. That kind of was Bitcoin.
That wasn't Szabo. Who created that? It was the,
I think it was Nick Szabo, yeah.
Was it?
The real Satoshi.
The real Satoshi. One of the people who speculated it might be Satoshi. If it's not the NSA.
That's time.
Awesome. Well, we have a hard stop here at the kind of the hour mark, but thank you all so much for tuning in. We did get through a lot of questions. Thank you if you sent us a question or a topic you want us to talk about. Thank you. We really appreciate it. We'll do another tweet 2 weeks from now. It'll be Friday. Pull up the calendar. We'll be back on Friday, March 2nd for our third roundtable. We're going to do them on kind of an every other week basis right now. Maybe we'll increase to weekly once we get our whole podcast studio built out and we can all have our own mic and make it sound a little better. But thank you all for listening.
Thanks, guys. When are we going to be doing Token Fest?
We'll be at Token Fest in San Francisco. If you're in the area, I believe it's 14th and 15th, Wednesday and Thursday. In San Francisco, really cool venue, a lot of great speakers. I'll be speaking. There are some other people who will probably have much more exciting ideas to share.
Draper.
Yeah, Draper will be there. A lot of big people will be there, and it should just be a great time to kind of network with the community and talk about what we love, which is crypto. So hope to see you guys there.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I sincerely appreciate it. If you'd like to request someone to be on the podcast in the future, tweet us at ICO Alert and let us know. Most of our guests are requests from listeners just like you, so we review every single recommendation that comes through in our Twitter feed. We'll look at everything. So if there's a lesser-known project that you think we should cover, let us know. Maybe we'll have them on the podcast. If you haven't already, please do subscribe and be the first to hear our new episodes. And also, don't forget to check out ICOAlert.com to see the only comprehensive list of active and upcoming ICOs. I'm your host, Robert Finch, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode.